Welcome back for more Vampire Diaries. This is the season 2 wrap-up, and I'm really excited. There's a lot to cover though, so we're going to be here a while. So grab some refreshments. I'll put timestamps in the description so you can just kind of jump to whatever you want to jump to, because I know not everybody is going to want to watch the whole video. So, okay, let's just get started. First of all, I mean, it should go without saying, but I'll say it anyway. This is just my opinion. You know, some people really don't like it when I dislike something or someone, and I can't help that. I'm not going to pretend to like something that I don't, because I don't want to be disingenuous, you know? So I'm just going to be honest and give you my opinion, but my opinion, I mean, who the hell am I, right? It doesn't matter. My opinion doesn't matter. So my opinion isn't any better than yours or anybody else's. So anyway, I just want to put that out there. And also, you know, opinions change. You know, you have to remember that this is my first time through the show, and what you're watching is literally my very first impression of something. And a lot of times when I'm editing, I'll pick up on something I didn't notice when I was doing the reaction, or I'll just, you know, kind of feel differently about something. But I mean, the reaction's done, right? So you're just getting my first impression of things. Sometimes my opinions do evolve. Sometimes they completely change. Sometimes it happens with comments as well. Sometimes, you know, you guys always leave me really thoughtful, interesting comments, and sometimes they also can, you know, make me see things from a different perspective, and I love that. So this is my opinion right now. I did not rewatch the season. I did go through and rewatch my reactions, which was painful, let me tell you. It was so cringy. I didn't watch my reviews, just the reaction part, but even just rewatching those reactions and just seeing like little snippets of those older episodes, I feel differently about things now than I did then when I was filming the reactions. So this is just how I'm feeling today. I do have some notes over here that I'll be referring to. So let's start with the dislikes. Let's just get those out of the way. It's not really something that I disliked, but it's just something that I noticed. I think I preferred in season 1, and that's the pacing. I feel like the pacing in season 1, it was so fast paced that they were just burning through plot in season 1 like crazy. Whereas in season 2, it very much, like, I couldn't even tell you what happened in season 1. Like, I can tell you things that happened, but like, what was the general theme of season 1? I don't even know, because so much went on. But in season 2, it really feels like the season was divided, so it was really focused on the werewolves in the first half, or maybe even a little more than the first half, and then the second half was very much focused on the ritual, the sacrifice, and Klaus. And I feel like it was really dragged out. I feel like the werewolf stuff in particular was really like they were really treading water a lot and just giving us a little tiny bit of information. And so a lot of it felt like filler, which I did not feel at all in season 1, because, you know, the whole werewolf plot line, if that took place in season 1, it would have been wrapped up in 3 episodes. It was just so quick. Like I said, they just burned through plot in season 1. And I personally, I did feel like there was some treading water. I really did like how they built up Klaus and the dread of him, and like, you know that he's going to show up at the end of the season and everybody's afraid of him. And I felt like that was really, really well done. The anticipation of Klaus's arrival and of the sacrifice in general, I thought that was really well done. So maybe I didn't quite so much feel... I do feel like there was a little bit of treading water, though, with Klaus as well. I was going to say not so much with Klaus, more with the werewolves, but I do think with Klaus there was still a little bit of treading water, because really, why didn't he show up sooner, right? Except for the fact that this is a TV show and we want him to show up at the end of the season. So yeah, it felt like they were dragging it out, but I did enjoy the anticipation, so I forgive it. Another, it's not a dislike. It's just, see, I love Damon in season 2, but I do kind of miss season 1 Damon, that sort of wild, dangerous, unpredictable Damon. And I miss him. I miss him being antagonistic to Stefan, even though I love, and see, these things, like, these things aren't even really dislikes. It's just, I love how their relationship, how Stefan has evolved. I love how much they did actually work together this season, and it's all great. But I also really enjoyed when they were super antagonistic to each other. That was just so much fun for me. So I miss that, but I wouldn't say that I prefer it. I prefer where they are now. So I guess I shouldn't have put it in a dislike, but I do miss it. I also miss the Delana banter and the sexual tension that we had in season 1. I feel like the majority of season 2, Damon was just kind of pining after her, but it wasn't, like, there wasn't a lot of flirtation or a lot of just playful banter and that sort of thing that we had in season 1. So I kind of missed that. So, but like, these things really, like I said, these things really aren't dislikes. I just miss some things about season 1, but I appreciate where things are now and kind of prefer where things are now. So I don't know. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But an actual dislike, and I'll talk about this more when I talk about some of the characters, but I really, and then again, this is just my taste, my personal taste, but I really do wish that this was more of an ensemble, as opposed to, like, pretty much if your last name isn't Salvatore or Gilbert, you don't get a whole lot to do. You don't get a lot of attention. And we have a lot of really interesting characters that just don't get a lot of focus. Like I said, when I talk about the characters, I'll talk about this more, because it just really bugs me sometimes, especially with Tyler, with Caroline. They're not necessarily, like, Tyler wasn't given any agency in his own story, really. He didn't play much of a role in his own story at all in terms of becoming a werewolf, like learning that he's a werewolf. So that is just not my preference. Everything is filtered through the Salvatores, and so we learn about everything through them. And I would just prefer a structure where we had episodes that were like Caroline centric, like this week's episode is Caroline centric, and then next week's episode is Tyler centric, and next week's episode is Jeremy centric. And of course you still have all of the characters, they all have a role to play, they all have something to do in that story, but we're focusing more on an individual. Again, that's not a Salvatore or a Gilbert. And kind of seeing the story play out through their eyes, from their point of view. So that's, again, just my preference. I don't see that changing, and it's fine, but it is a dislike for me, because particularly in this season, there was a lot of great character work, but we didn't spend a lot of time in anyone else's point of view. And then the other thing that is a dislike, again, it's just my personal taste. There are basically two kinds of shows. There are plot-driven shows and character-driven shows. And while this show has some really fantastic characters, this is very much a plot-driven show. And that is just not my preference. My preference is always going to be for character. You know, like a lot of people will really complain about plot holes and, you know, these like little details, these little story details. And I don't care about those things. I'm really never, or very rarely, am I gonna complain about a plot hole or anything like that. To me, it's just all about character. And sometimes this show can just really just focus way too much on the twists and the turns and the double and triple and quadruple crosses. And that can get kind of tiring for me because I just really want to see how the characters are dealing with things and how they're reacting and how they're relating to each other, rather than just, you know, being shocked because this shocking thing happened, or, you know, oh, somebody betrayed somebody else, and you know what I mean, the plot twists. So I totally understand and can appreciate when you know people who are really, really into that, and that's awesome. But just for me, it's just all about character for me, and I don't really care as much about the plot twists and that sort of thing. So for my likes, there were a lot of really strong episodes this season, a lot of really great episodes. I really enjoyed the doppelganger storyline in general. I loved seeing more supernaturals, so the werewolves, that was great. And new spells as well, that was great. And Bonnie is getting super powerful, that was really interesting. You know, there was a lot of good world building this season. There was a lot of great character work, as I said. Particularly, I enjoyed the character work done with Damon, Caroline, and Stefan. And I enjoyed a lot of the new characters that we met this season, particularly Rose and Elijah. Oh, I really enjoyed the build up to Klaus and the sort of fear and dread that was instilled in us, like waiting for Klaus to show up. I did enjoy a lot of there were a lot of great twists and turns and shocking moments that I did enjoy. It's not that I don't enjoy those things. I just sometimes think that the show focuses too much on that rather than, you know, sometimes I just wish that they would tell a straight story. And I really like the subversion of Klaus not being killed at the end of 221. Although I was disappointed in Elijah for betraying Elena. So those are just sort of general likes and dislikes, you know, not really. Now let's talk about the characters. So first of all, I just want to say that, you know, again, this is just my opinion. Everybody likes different things. We are, you know, attracted to different characters for different reasons, and just because somebody didn't make it on my top 10 list doesn't mean that I hate them. There's only one character that I hated, and we'll talk about that character right now. But everybody else that I'm about to list, I don't hate them. They're just not in my top 10. Okay. So the only character that I actually, I don't even like using the word hate, like that's such a strong word, but I really, really, really did not like this character, and that is Isabel. Isabel was a really interesting concept for a character. This woman obsessed with vampires. She was like a parapsychologist or something like that. I can't remember, but she studied vampires and was obsessed with them and became a vampire. And also the fact that she was obsessed with vampires and happened to give birth to a doppelganger, that seems like it's too much of a coincidence, so there might be more story there. Maybe we'll see her again in flashbacks. But while the character is an interesting, like this is an interesting concept for a character, in the execution, she just didn't work for me. I didn't enjoy the performance. The only thing I did enjoy, there was that scene with her and Damon that I absolutely loved back in season 1. They're like making out and then he slams her on the ground and tells her not to mess with Elena. I loved that scene. But that's the only thing that I liked about Isabel. The only time I liked her, I just didn't think she was a very good character. So I'm sorry to the Isabel fans out there, but she just does not do it for me. But that's the only character that I would say that I hate. So all these others, they just didn't make my top 10. So the next one I'll talk about is Liz, who I love. She's such an interesting character. And, you know, I understand where she's coming from. She was raised to hate vampires, and now she has a vampire daughter. She reminds me of a character that we would have on Supernatural. I just really like Liz a lot, and I'm really excited now that she seems to have accepted Caroline for who she is. And I really love her friendship with Damon. I'm pretty sure we're not going to erase her memory again. Yeah, I hope she ends up on our team, because that would be very, very cool. Matt. Oh, Matt. I don't hate him, but he's boring. And not because he's a human, but because of his personality. Sorry. Matt is just a very dour character. And he's just not any fun. He's not any fun for the other characters. He's not fun. I don't think any of the other characters really think that he's a fun guy to hang out with, and I don't find him fun to watch. But I think that on another show, like a regular teen drama, he would be a really interesting character. He just, like, they need to do more with him. They need to flesh him out more, and they need to give him more to do, and they need to give him more personality, because like I said, he's just a very, very dour character. And I understand that he's got a tough life. He's got a tough situation at home, but that's all we see of him. It's all we know of him. And it's just not entertaining. The next one is Tyler. So Tyler could be the protagonist of another show. He really could be. I mean, the teenage boy finds out that he's a werewolf, and his, you know, struggles with learning about his werewolf self and his family history and all of that. That could be really interesting, and I'm interested in it, but the show wasn't, apparently. Because like I said, Tyler didn't get to really have any agency or play much of a role in his own story. I really didn't like how we learned about vampires through the Salvatores. I think we should have been with Tyler on that journey to learn about werewolves and learn about that lore. And by the way, we didn't really learn much, did we? Because everything that we learned was basically just the sun and the moon curse, which was bullshit. So we didn't really learn much about werewolves to begin with. And I just think that's a shame. I really, really enjoy the layers that they added to Tyler with this storyline. I think it was a great choice, because he was so completely one-dimensional in the first season, but we didn't spend much time with him. Tyler was just used to further the story with the Salvatores and Elena, and then when we didn't need him for that anymore, we got rid of him for I don't even know how many episodes, and then he just comes back when we need him again and barely has anything to do. And this is the kind of thing that I'm talking about when I say that I would prefer that it was more of an ensemble show, because yeah, we just didn't use Tyler very much, and his story was really interesting. I wanted to know more about the wolves, and I want to know more about his history and his family history and stuff like that. And I'm sure we will get little kernels of that peppered throughout the series, but I need I need more. I need more right now. And I just think that I just feel like they dropped the ball. I don't know. It bugs me. I think Tyler could have been on my top 10 list if they had just given him more focus. But I do really enjoy what we got, and I love his friendship with Caroline. Jenna. Oh, poor Jenna. I don't have a lot to say about her. She seemed sweet and fun-loving and caring. And I liked that she brought some levity to the show, because this is a very serious show. And I guess that would maybe be, again, not a criticism exactly, not a dislike. It's just my preference. I prefer a show that mixes more humor and comedy. Of course, not all shows can do that well, but you know, when shows can do that really well, and I'm thinking of Buffy and Angel and Supernatural and the X-Files. Those are all shows that can really mix horror and serious, you know, drama and comedy. And this show is very serious, and Jenna was kind of, you know, one of the only characters that provided any sort of levity, but we barely ever saw her. And so I think it was really a shame that they killed her. I think Vampire Aunt Jenna could have been really awesome. And yeah, we just didn't pay much attention to her, but I liked her whenever she was around. And I think it was a missed opportunity to, you know, have Vampire Aunt Jenna and also Alaric having a vampire girlfriend. I really liked their relationship. Again, it provided some humor and some levity. Because, you know, really Damon is kind of the only character who provides any sort of, you know, humor on a regular basis. So I always liked scenes with Alaric and Jenna. Or even with Jenna and Damon. I think there were some nice scenes with them in the first season, and then I think in the beginning part of this season as well. Like at the barbecue, when Jenna had that barbecue and stuff. There were some good scenes with her and Damon, and they had some chemistry. But Damon has chemistry with everybody, so, you know. Okay, I gotta prepare for this one. Everybody get ready to hit the dislike button. Alright, Catherine. I don't like her. I appreciate that she's a very popular character. I understand why she is. I totally get it. She just doesn't do it for me. I don't hate her, but she's just not a character that I connect to. I always connect to a character through their vulnerability. That just for me personally, that is how I connect to a character. And Catherine doesn't have any vulnerability. The only time we ever saw, as far as I can recall, any kind of vulnerability was in the episode Katerina, when she was looking at that, like her old journal or whatever, and there were photos of her parents. That was the only time that she showed a little bit of vulnerability. Besides that, she doesn't. I mean, even when she was running from Klaus in those flashbacks in Katerina, she wasn't really vulnerable, and she was pretty much calling the shots, and she vamped herself, and, you know, she's always thinking 10 steps ahead of everybody. She's clearly very intelligent and very clever, but she's just not a character that I am drawn to. The other thing about her that I don't like is that she's a very repetitive character. She has the same conversations with the same characters all the time. Like every time she's with Stefan, it's "you love me" or "you're gonna love me again," over and over and over. With Damon, it's her trying to seduce him or trying to, you know, just play with his head about whether or not she loved him. It's the same shtick with her all the time. And the other thing is that she's always lying. So when everything that a character says is a lie, then nothing that they say matters. It doesn't hold any weight. Like in 222, she tells Elena that she loved both of the brothers. And you can take that at face value, but how many times did she say that she didn't love Damon? You know what I mean? It's just like, I can't be like, oh, she loved them both? Really? Because it's probably just another lie. So, if you can't trust anything that a character says, then nothing that they say matters. So, she just doesn't do it for me. And I'm sorry. I know how much you guys love her, and I'm sorry that I don't share that love. It's just how it is. And then lastly, the last person I'm going to talk about before I get to my top 10 is Klaus. And to be honest, I really don't have much of an opinion. Like I said, I really enjoyed how they built up that character. I loved Matt Davis's portrayal of Klaus. While I always connect to a character through their vulnerability, so far Klaus isn't showing any vulnerability. But I do also love a villain who just delights in being evil. You know, the sort of mustache twirling kind of villain. And I think that that's kind of what they're going for right now. But also based on your comments, I get the impression that there's, more layers to him, and perhaps there's going to be a redemption arc. I don't want to know. Please don't tell me. I really know absolutely nothing about this show. I didn't know anything about it going in. But I do get the impression that there is some kind of a redemption arc, or there's more than meets the eye with Klaus. So I'm interested in what we're gonna find out about him. But right now I feel pretty neutral, honestly. I don't really have much to say about him. I'm sorry. Okay, now we'll get to my top 10 favorites. It's interesting because I feel like the top 4 are set in stone. The top 4 are the top 4, and that's it. I feel like these others, I could really move around. Like if I made this list tomorrow, I might make it a little different. Like I might put people in a different position. But the top 4, that's not going to change. At least not for now. Like who knows what's going to happen in the future, in future seasons. But right now, the top 4 is set in stone. But everybody else, I might move them around depending on my particular mood. But this is the list that I have today. So for number 10, Jeremy. Honestly, I feel pretty neutral about Jeremy overall. I think that in this season, they really struggled with what to do with him. I think Jeremy needs to find a place in the story. And based on the last scene in 222, I think maybe they have found something for him to do. Because now he can, I guess, see dead people. I don't really know where that's going to go, but that's what it looks like. And I'm really intrigued. I like Jeremy just fine. I mean, he made it on my top 10 list, but, even even with his hairstyles and his clothing that constantly kept changing in the first half of the season, is like they just couldn't figure out, like, the production team, they just couldn't decide where he fits in and who he is. And in the first season, he was a little bit annoying, but at least he had a purpose and he had something to do. And I just feel like this season, he really hasn't had anything to do. So that's why he's number 10. I do like him, and hopefully we're going to get some much more interesting stories with him coming up. So, okay, number 9. This is a tough one. This is so hard. So, number 9 is John. John was a fantastic antagonist. I really, really enjoyed him. I loved hating him. And then I came to actually like him. And it wasn't this big sweeping redemption arc like we're doing with Damon, but it was a really solid redemption arc. I loved his banter, his dynamic with Damon and with Alaric. Yeah, he was just a fun character, and I almost want to rate him even higher, but I can't justify it. But he was a lot of fun, and I'm going to miss him, honestly. It was sad that he died, but he went out a hero. So, and he made me cry. Well, it was really Elena, like in that scene where she is at the funeral and you're getting John's voiceover reading the letter. I was getting choked up, but then when Elena lost it, then I just lost it. So, but yeah, so John was great. I like John. Number 8 is Elijah. I really love Elijah. Now, we've got some trust issues. That we have to work through now. But I am really loving him. He was really intimidating when he was first introduced. I loved those scenes in, oh God, I can't even remember what episode. Was it Rose, maybe? When he was first introduced and he was like ripping out everybody's hearts, and he was just really scary and really intimidating, and I enjoy him a lot. And then later, he did seem like a very honorable man, and he even had a bit of a sense of humor. I would say one criticism is that he does look a bit weak now. Like, he was this big scary original when he was introduced, but then he was killed 3 times in one season, twice by humans. So it does make him look weak. It does kind of contradict his badassery from earlier episodes. But he just seems like a really interesting character, and a character that I could really end up actually caring about. And he is a character that does have some vulnerability because he was killed 3 times. And because you can see how much his family means to him. So yeah, I think he could have a really interesting dynamic with Klaus. I think he could have a really interesting dynamic with the rest of our people. I am just really excited to see more of him. So really, really loving Elijah. And his hair got better. His hair is quite luscious. It's very, very nice, but the center part was just not working for me. He looked like a 5-year-old boy. But later on, they sort of put it a little bit off center, and it just looked a little bit better. So the hair is all right. And I also think it might be interesting to have sort of a mirrored relationship with 2 sets of brothers. Like, that might be an interesting comparison as well. So anyway, moving on. So for number 7, we have Bonnie. And Bonnie is a character who really could be in the top 5 or even the top 3. But I have a lot of issues with how they're handling her character. So first of all, I love her strength and her determination. I love how powerful she is as a witch, but also just as a person. Like, she's just a very strong character. She's a very powerful character, and I really appreciate that. I love her friendship with Elena and how she would literally die for Elena without batting an eyelash. I love her banter with Damon. I love how she gives as much as she gets from him, and that their dynamic is so much fun. And her relationship with Jeremy is fine. I don't ship it, but it's fine. I don't hate it. Whatever. I'm glad they're happy. But honestly, we need more Bonnie. We need more Bonnie, and I've been saying this. That was my main complaint about season 1, was that we didn't have enough Bonnie. And it's not, I guess, my main complaint about season 2, but it's still a complaint. Who is Bonnie besides a witch and Elena's best friend? Who is she? What kind of music does she listen to? What kind of car does she drive? Does she have parents? Does she have siblings? Have we ever been to her house or in her bedroom? or seen her in a moment, like in a private moment when she wasn't interacting with somebody named Salvatore or Gilbert. Maybe she's had a couple scenes with Caroline, but who is Bonnie? It's absolutely ridiculous that we're 2 seasons in, and I don't know, maybe the actress, maybe she has other commitments and they just can't use her that much. But I mean, the whole finale was all about Bonnie was the secret weapon, and yeah, she was in like 2 scenes and it was just ridiculous. It's really unacceptable, and I don't understand. I don't understand why. I really like her, and I think that she's a very interesting character and a very strong character, but we just don't get to know her very much. And it's kind of bullshit. So the next character is probably cheating. I probably should not have this character on my list. And I was actually going to bump them off and put Tyler at number 10. But since I'm probably not going to have another opportunity to rank this character, I'm going to go ahead and put her at number 6, and that is Rose. I love Rose. She was so great. I loved her relationship with Damon. I loved her backstory. I loved her budding friendship with Elena. I just thought she was a great character, and I was really disappointed that they killed her off so quickly. I know that that actress went over to The Walking Dead that same year, so I knew she wasn't going to be a regular, but I thought that she might, you know, be a character who would pop in from time to time. And yeah, she was only in like 3 or 4 episodes, and then they killed her, but she made such an impression. She was so fantastic that it's kind of cheating to put her on the list, but you know, honestly, if she was a regular, she could be not my favorite character. I don't think anybody could ever top my favorite character. But she could be number 2, maybe. I couldn't justify placing her any higher on the list, but I think she was wonderful and I loved her, and I'm sad that she's gone. At number 5, we have Stefan. Stefan has really, really grown on me this season. I did not enjoy him as a character in season 1, except for his blood addiction. I thought that was really interesting. But besides that, there was nothing I found interesting about Stefan in the slightest in the first season. In the second season, I mean, right off the bat, he was carrying himself differently. He was speaking differently. He was making jokes. He had personality. I really loved, like I said, his relationship with Damon. I love his friendship with Caroline. He had one of my favorite lines this season with maybe they're Ninja Turtles, which sounds like a Damon line, but I loved it. So yeah, there were a lot of moments that I really loved Stefan this season. And I think that a lot of the things that I didn't like about him in season 1, those things weren't present in season 2. In season 1, I really hated the constant lying and hiding information, keeping things from everybody, but particularly Elena. But the thing about it was how the show was structured. Stefan had to keep all of that information from Elena, because if he didn't, then 2 seasons of plot would have been ruined. In the first season, he would tell Elena that he wanted to be honest with her and he wanted her to know everything, but he would only ever tell her that after she found out that he was lying, like after he got caught lying about something, but he would never give her the full story. And it makes him look bad as a character, right? It makes him look like a bad person. But it's really like Stefan withholding that information from Elena was literally driving the plot. Like, we couldn't know these things. Elena couldn't know these things because of things that were going to happen later on. So I don't think that the writers were trying to make him look like a bad guy. I think that was just an inadvertent side effect. But yeah, he looked like a bad guy in the first season. And, you know, it's funny because I thought that Damon was going to be the really divisive character, because I got comments like, you know, oh, you prepare for the hate that you're going to get for liking Damon. And all the comments are pretty much like 99% of the comments that I get about Damon are all positive. It seems like Stefan is the divisive character. People either really love him or they really hate him. And I didn't hate him in the first season, but I didn't like him. This season, I really am liking him quite a lot. Of course, I don't know what they're going to do with him. I'm really curious about, you know, now he's off being Klaus's wingman. I'm curious about where that's going to take him as a character. And I have no idea how I'll feel about him in the future. But for right now, I'm actually really enjoying Stefan quite a lot. And I think that, you know, he clearly thinks of himself as the good brother, even though from what we found out, he was actually worse than Damon for at least some amount of time. So I just think that Stefan has a really interesting backstory, and we really haven't focused on Stefan as a character this season. So I would really like some focus on him next season, and maybe he's the one that's going to have to be saved next season, which would be really interesting. So yeah, I'm enjoying Stefan. I had very complicated feelings about him in the first season. The second season, I think he's a complicated character, but I'm just really enjoying him. And I enjoyed Stelena a lot more this season, although I don't ship it. I didn't have any major issues with it. I didn't really have any major issues with it in the first season, I guess. I mean, there's some things, whatever, you can listen to those reviews. But Stelena worked for me better this season. So, you know, I pretty much have only positive things to say about Stefan as of right now. Now, I said earlier that all of those characters, I could reorder them on any given day. I might put them in a different position. But my top 4 is my top 4. So coming in at number 4 is Miss Elena Gilbert. I love her. I think she's wonderful. I love her empathy. I love her compassion, how she is able to put herself in other people's shoes. She's very forgiving. And yeah, she's smart and brave, and I just think she's a great character. I really love her. I think she had a lot of really good moments in this season. One of my favorite moments was when she rescued Stefan from the well. That was absolutely wonderful. You know, I didn't know when she removed the dagger from Elijah. I was like, that's either really smart or really dumb. I don't know. And, you know, it didn't work out the way that she wanted it to work out because Elijah, you know, backed out. He betrayed her in the end. But I loved how she wanted to take charge of herself and took the initiative to make the deal, to make a few deals with Elijah. And yeah, I think she's a great character. I really love Elena. And one of the things that I always really liked about her, even in the first season as well, she never played the brothers against each other, because she really could very easily do that. And I feel like another character, like on another show, oh yeah, she would be playing the brothers against each other all the time. And Elena has never done that. She never tries to make either one of them jealous. She knows how Damon feels about her, but she sets boundaries. And yeah, she never tries to make Stefan jealous or anything. Like, I just think Elena is great. And I got a couple comments. I've gotten comments from people saying that a lot of people don't like Elena, which I think is really surprising. But I haven't actually gotten any comments from people saying that they don't like Elena. Maybe it has to do with something that happens in the future. Maybe it has to do with the love triangle, depending on who she ends up choosing. I mean, I don't know if she ends up with either of them, but you know, how the love triangle plays out, that might have something to do with people's feelings toward Elena. I'm not really sure. Please don't tell me. Number 3 is my dear cinnamon roll, Caroline. I love her with all my heart. I would die for her. She is just so friggin' sweet. She's so sweet. She's so adorable. She's just such a good person, and she tries so hard. She tried really hard as a human, and she still tries really hard as a vampire. The way that she took care of Tyler, you know, she's just such a good friend. I think that turning her into a vampire was a stroke of genius. I love that they did that. That's one of my favorite things that happened this season. Caroline is just wonderful, and I adore her. I love her with all my heart. The thing is, like, about my top 3 characters, and about like my favorite characters in general, is that my very favorite characters are always going to be the characters that make me laugh. And with Caroline, sometimes those characters are intentionally funny, but Caroline makes me laugh all the time, and it's very unintentional. She's not trying to be funny, but she's just so adorable that she makes me laugh. So that's one of my favorite things about her, is that she is just so, she is she is very sort of neurotic and insecure, which, you know, just makes me want to protect her. But she can also be really badass and really fierce and unintentionally silly. I just love her. I just love her so much. I just love her. Okay, and my number 2 favorite character is Alaric, of course. I love Alaric. He's another character who really makes me laugh, and sometimes it's intentional and sometimes it's unintentional. But I absolutely adore Alaric. I loved him as Klaus, of course. I loved him with Jenna. Basically, I love him, you know, paired up with anybody. I love his dynamic with Elena. I love his dynamic with Jeremy. I love Delaric. They're probably my favorite thing, like my favorite pairing besides Delana. And we didn't really get any Delana this season, not much. Probably the Delaric moments are like some of my favorite moments of the whole season. I enjoy him with Stefan, and I really loved him with Jenna, and I don't know. I really love that he's human and he's just this like badass vampire hunter. I adore his friendship with Damon because it was so antagonistic to begin with, and it's now they just have like a genuine brotherly kind of love and respect for each other, and I just adore that to my core. I just think Alaric is such a good guy. You know, he's just such a good guy. He's a badass, he's fun, and I love him. He's one of my favorite characters ever. And of course, my number 1 favorite character, to the surprise of absolutely nobody, is Damon. I adore Damon. He's one of my favorite characters ever. Like, he's maybe in my top 5 favorite characters in anything. I love him when he's bad. I love him when he's good. I love his passion. Yes, his impulsivity sometimes gets on my nerves just because it's been done so many times. But I just love how passionate he is. I love his vulnerability. You know, I said that I always connect to a character through their vulnerability, and Damon is the perfect example of that, because even in the first season, when he was just a bad guy, right? He was just a villain in the majority of season 1. You could see that there was all this vulnerability inside him that he was keeping hidden, but you can see it in his eyes. You can read it on his face. And I adore that about him. My favorite trope in storytelling is a redemption arc, which is what we're getting with him. So, you know, I love a good bad guy. I love a redemption arc. And I'm a sucker for a love triangle. I know a lot of people don't really like love triangles and are maybe kind of sick of them. I love triangles. Like they're like catnip to me if they're done well. And I think this one's done really well. So Damon just has all of those characteristics. He's everything. Like if you're gonna put together like my favorite kind of character, it would be Damon. Like he makes me laugh. He's a badass. He's a romantic. He's vulnerable. He's everything. He's everything. And I love how they didn't just make him good, that he has been struggling. I love the slow burn of the love triangle. Yeah, Damon is just a wonderful character. And I can understand, I can see why some people don't like him. I mean, if that's not the type of character that you like, I completely understand. I mean, I can completely sympathize with that. But for me, he is everything that I love in a character. He's everything that I want in a character. So yeah, Damon Salvatore is fucking amazing and I love him.